Okay. Growing up, we're often told the American dream, and that's usually what we strive for in all of our own lives. We all have common goals like graduating from college, getting a decent job, getting married, and hopefully living a normal life. But for many Americans, they don't get this chance. Often, people are forced into human trafficking, and they don't get a chance to live out the American dream, which is such a normal lifestyle here. While people are forced to do this and forced to sell their bodies for money, I know I complain a lot whenever I don't have enough money to go out to eat right when I want to. It's weird to think that in this society where we can have everything at the click of a button, there are people who suffer like this. In my previous speech, I talked about a policy that should be put into place where all offenders of human trafficking should be charged with a first-degree felony, and that victims of this should be placed in witness protection as well as psychological care in order to help them get back to a normal life. A lot of people wonder if we should do more about human trafficking than what's already being done. 3 arguments against this are: there's already a policy in place, the issue is too big to handle, and the victims have gotten themselves into the situation and so they can handle it. Today I'm going to refute these 3 arguments and explain why my policy for my previous speech should still be put into place. The first argument I'm going to refute is there's already a policy in place, so why do a new one? The current policy, according to NCSL, is it's a second-degree felony if you're a trafficker, and unless the victim is a child under the age of 14 or the victim dies, in which case it's a first-degree felony. Now, I'm not saying that these punishments are not severe, because they are. A second-degree felony ends up with 2 to 20 years in prison, and I know that's longer in prison than I would ever want to spend. But when you think about what happens in human trafficking, and these lives are getting ruined and people are dying and they'll never be able to fully recover from this, shouldn't there be a harsher punishment? The child case and the death cases are this severe, which I think is great, and I think it should stay the same. But why isn't it the same for teenagers and adults? Teenagers and adults still have a sense of innocence that's being lost when they're forced to go into human trafficking. And they're also people, and they're suffering the same things that is going on. All ages have to suffer this horrible event, and if they get out, then they're forced to face the memories. And so why not help them feel as secure as possible? A new policy put into place would take a lot of work, but I think it's worth it to save the lives of so many people. Why should someone that ruins someone else's lives and possibly kills someone else only suffer 20 years in prison? 20 years is a pretty long time, but when you think about everything that's gone on, it should be longer. I believe in second chances, and I think that they're a great thing, but how many people are we going to force to suffer and lose their lives just because we want to give people second chances? I believe that all offenders should be charged with a first-degree felony, and with this policy, that will be what happens. Now that I've talked about the current policy, I'm going to refute the argument that this is too big of an issue. There are 27 million modern-day slaves in the entire world, and 200,000 of those are in the United States, and that's found at theenditmovement.com. This is a really big issue, and when you think of a big issue, often the question comes up of how can we begin, or where do we start to fix this? It will be a lot of work, but a lot of baby steps and a lot of small things that you can do can help change this big issue. I know personally for me, something that I've done is the End It movement, and that was on February 27th, where I joined a lot of other college students and supporters and drew a red X on my hand for awareness for modern-day slavery. And you may be asking, how does drawing a red X on your hand stop end human trafficking? And alone, it won't. On a picture that Passion posted on Instagram on February 27th, they had a lot of their supporters with a red X on their hand, and the caption was, "Awareness isn't everything, but without it, slavery will never end." Promoting this and getting the word out won't stop it alone, but it will get the word out, and it will tell people what's going on, and so the change can happen. Isn't that how everything gets changed? It starts with something small to get awareness and tells people what's going on, and eventually a group of people that's big enough is moved enough so that something can happen about it. 200,000 people is a lot, but when you think about how many people there are that could get involved and care about this issue, it could help. Just because it's a big number, that doesn't mean that we should care less. In fact, I think it should do the opposite. I think we should see this number be moved, that we should want to do something about this issue. Now that I've talked about how this is a big issue, now I'm going to move on to the argument that the victims have gotten themselves into the situation and so they can handle it. Usually if you're out in public or if you have a friend that's doing something not right and they're suffering for it, you think, oh, well, this person just brought it upon themselves. This is a common misconception that happens with human trafficking. People think that these people are in the situations they're in because they want to live this lifestyle, or they made a decision to live like this, when that is not true at all. They're usually lured in by people who are charming and convincing that they have a better life than they're already living. On the Polaris Project website, it says, traffickers often prey on people who are hoping for a better life, lack employment opportunities, have an unstable home life, or have a history of sexual abuse. The people in these situations are extremely vulnerable, and they are desperate to get out of this situation and do whatever they can to help them get a better life. Because of these traffickers being so charming and so convincing that they have a better life, the victims fall into the trap, and by the time they realize that they're in, it's too late to get out. Even if they tried to get out, they run the risk of being physically harmed or even killed. The common myth that this is the victim's fault is very false. Why would anyone choose this lifestyle when you think about it? You wouldn't even wish this on your worst enemies, I hope, and so why would someone wish this on themselves? The policy that would be put into place would help these victims get as back to a normal lifestyle as they could, and so they could live the life that they choose. So in conclusion, there are many opposing arguments against putting a new policy in place for human trafficking. Of course, no one is fully against human trafficking, but a lot of people see that they're not being directly affected, and so they don't understand what the problem is, or they just don't realize that it's that big of a problem as it is. I have refuted the arguments that a policy is already in place, that this is too big of an issue, and that the victims can handle the situation. In a letter to Henry L. Pierce, Abraham Lincoln said, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves." And according to this quote, no one deserves freedom more than another person, and I firmly believe that this is still true today, in today's society. Why should others have to suffer while we're living a normal life and while we're living comfortably? This is not very well known, but does that mean it needs to be prevented any less?